Hi, my name is Christoph from CBR Technology, and today I'd like to talk about the project costing module from Business Central. It used to be called the job costing module, and it is part of the Business Central Essential product. You do not need to purchase the premium license in order to obtain the capabilities of this module, which is part of the native Microsoft product. The clients that typically deploy this module are in the obvious selection, of course, being the construction industry, but we also deployed it on organizations in the trades, electrical, plumbing, HVAC, engineering. Law offices could use it as well, and track their time and material type of projects for their clients. And of course, architects, ITs, and really any other professional services organization that tracks timesheets against specific projects. Another kind of off-label use that I've seen people use the project costing module for are large-scale marketing expenses in projects. And these would be decisions on attending an expo somewhere in person or launching some sort of a large-scale marketing project, and you won't generate a directly associated revenue stream with that, but you will track multiple expenses that are associated with these sort of projects. So it's really more for just straight expense tracking rather than trying to balance revenue with expenses and generating a profit that is associated with the job costing module. Before we dive into the actual Business Central environment, I wanted to go over the project costing data model on this slide to go through the specific steps that are typically required for the Business Central system. So on the left top side of this slide, of course, you see our project master table, which then is divided into tasks. In each task, in turn, can be divided into job planning lines. The job planning lines could be merely there for budgeting purposes, or they could be there to indicate actual revenue generation lines that are associated with each task. The complexity of these project setups could be as simple as you like. It could be a single project with a single task and no planning lines, or it could be highly complicated depending on the type of project you're dealing with. Once you are recording transactions against a project, you'll have four types of methodologies on how you can record these sort of transactions. One is an item project journal, which would be inventory items that are being used in a particular project. You have an expense journal, which of course allows you to record expenses against a particular journal project. You have timesheets to record resources and their time against projects. These resources could also include subcontractors. And then finally, you can link purchase orders to projects as well, which I'll be showing you later in the video. Once you actually start recording these sort of expenses, you have a number of options on what you can do with that. Of course, the software will generate a sales invoice based on the revenue side of the project that you're setting up, which then of course hits your general ledger as well. The software does fully support work in progress or WIP computations based on percentage completion and a number of other options that we'll go through in a moment. And all of that can, of course, affect the general ledger as well. We are offering an enhancement module to the core Microsoft module as well, which will deal with issues like AIA billing if you have that sort of requirement due to doing business with governmental agencies. And we also added some functionality surrounding PO change requests, as well as project change orders, or what some people still call job change orders as well. So with this having been covered, let me go ahead and dive into Business Central to go over some of the details with you. So here we are in Business Central, obviously in Kronos, USA, so you may follow along our demo here as well if you like online. So project management tool is now active. I'm going to go into projects itself and basically set up a brand new project from scratch. So I'm going to hit new here on my project environment. And as you can see here, I've configured the software to allow me multiple types of projects that I might be involved with. So I'm pretending to have residential, commercial, or governmental projects that I might be involved with. And let's say I'm doing a residential project here. As you can see, the software of course can assign it based on the numbering series, different types of numbers. And I'm going to do a, let's say, a redesign of a kitchen project. And I can go in here and pick my customer out and add a new customer on the fly as I go along. And I can assign a project manager to my project here. I can put a project temporarily on hold. I can refer to an external document number. If I'm working with a corporation or government agency, I might have a PO number or a contract ID that I'd like to reference. And then I go into the posting details on the below the line item section here, where I can have various posting defaults and work in progress or WIP methods that I'm involved with. This is one of the things I'd like to show you, where you can set up different WIP methods, including percent of completion, of course, which is probably the most common one used, as well as some of the other ones that are triggered by various stages and comparisons of sales revenues and things of that nature. And finally, the status of the POs of the project is also important in that we have planning, quoting, opening, and then completion. The completion holds a pretty specific importance here, because it will eventually reverse any work in progress general ledger entries that you've made. So it's important to keep that process in mind. Finally, when it comes to billing to the project to a customer, you actually have multiple choices here on how you can bill customers. So you can go to customers directly, you can set it up for some sort of a corporate headquarter billing, and other options you have in this area. And then finally, of course, there's some rudimentary project date ranges on here, which you see here. However, it's important to understand that Business Central is not attempting to do a project management solution. They're doing a project costing solution. So we typically supplement this accounting side of the project costing side of things with other tools like Jira and other tools you might be familiar with already to manage the actual day-to-day tasks and assignments of tasks and completion of tasks and Gantt charts and things of that nature. So again, this is a project costing module, not a project management module, which is a very different thing. But as you can see here, you can easily connect the two to each other and work with them in concert. So now I'm going to move into the line details of my project proposal that I'm working on as we speak. And I could, of course, start from scratch and just manually type it in. However, there's a feature in Business Central that allows me to make this process quite a bit easier, which is the copy feature. So in my case, I've set up a template for kitchen redesign that I wish to use for this particular project for Peter Miller. And I'm going to go into this and select one of these templates. There's no limit to how many templates you can have and what do they contain. In my case here, I have a kitchen redesign template. I wish to copy the entire template. I could pick just some portion of it if I like, but as you can see here, I have the basic steps: design, planning, permitting, scheduling, demo, install, and inspection are my go-to tasks for this particular project. And I wish to copy the entire project into the system for all budget and billable entries of this project as is. So if I hit OK here, you'll see the entire details of this kitchen project being pulled in automatically, and I have both a budgeted cost and a budgeted billable amount in here as well. Once I click on each line detail, I can see how the system computed these numbers and how they came about based on the budget or the template. And as you can see here, I put in 20 hours of both architects and engineering time, plus some 8 hours of an internal resource that I need on this particular phase of the project. And of course, that will total out in terms of cost and billing accordingly in the system here as well. So you can set this all up and then, of course, make changes to it quite easily. If you believe this particular project needs less hours of time, and maybe I need only 15 hours of an architect or 25 hours of an architect, I can just simply make adjustments in here on the fly for this particular project that I'm working on. So once I'm done with my copy process from the template, I now have basically a budget that's a project that's ready to go. And when I hit my preview and my quote, I can take a look at the details of how this comes together. In my case here, I'm printing a single line for each task. We've had many modifications done to the system that bring various levels of details here, where you can either do a total for the entire project, or you can get more granular and break out the particular billable lines for each one of the phases. So there's all kinds of formatting options that you have in the report design of Microsoft itself. But essentially my project is now ready to be used, and this is what I would typically get started with. There are planning and quoting stages of projects that you could start with. So right now we're just quoting this, and it's not a live project yet. Once I gain the business from the client, I would then switch the status into an open project, and then finally when it's done it will be completed. And of course you have reporting capabilities surrounding that as well. Of course, unlike other project costing systems, this ties completely into the inventory management control part of Business Central as well. So in my case, when I'm installing the new kitchen, not only do I require some services or subcontractors to be part of the project, but I also require some physical inventory as well. So if you don't care about inventory management, you can just ignore this part, but I wanted to make sure you see the capabilities of Business Central to tie into a complete system here with inventory items as well. So you can specify, what specific kitchen components you're using. I didn't set up a whole bunch of kitchen specific things in this example, but this will be, refrigerators and ovens and stovetops and things of that nature that you might need in the case of kitchen redesign. So as you identify items that are part of this kitchen redesign, and they are in fact part of our kitchen project that got approved, you'll notice that once it's open and it's approved, it will actually show up on another part of the software called the order planning tool. So the order planning tool will actually show you this project that was approved and show you the kind of inventory items that you need to purchase in order to complete this project. So it knows what is required, what's not required. It looks, when you hit this order planning tool, it will figure out what's actually in stock versus what's not in stock and needs to be ordered. And when you are reviewing this, you can simply hit this button that says make order, and it will actually generate a purchase order for you completely from this planning tool. So it'll know that the item is normally provided by a certain vendor, it has the pricing on file, and will generate a PO. And of course you can still edit the PO before you actually issue it to a vendor. So I wanted to make sure I show you this part of it, because this is one of the competitive differentiators between Business Central and other products, in that it has the full breadth of the ERP system behind it, not just a basic billing and expense tool as such. Now, having talked about inventory management, I'm going to go back into kitchen redesign, and also wanted to show non-inventory related items, which are things that just are straight up expenses that you expect, and these would be GL accounts. So as you can see here, for example, I'm anticipating a permit fee of $750, and I can put that in the system just as a GL account. So what types of things you can either budget for or bill for, or both, are resources, which are either subcontractors or internal folks that work with your team, items as inventory items, GL accounts as well. So all those are choices that you can choose from, and you get as granular or as top level management as you like as part of this setup of the project. As next step, I'd like to talk about how to create an actual PO, and I'm going to show you how to do that manually as it relates to this particular PO here. So, as I showed you a moment ago, this software will generate purchase orders for you directly against a specific project. However, if you aggregate projects and you have common materials, maybe in the roofing industry or other industries where you use the same sort of raw materials, laments and what have you, for multiple different projects, you might want to consolidate your purchases for multiple projects as part of the item inventory setup. And again, a real brief look at the item setup in here is when you do look at items in the system, you do have the ability to also track quantities on project orders directly. So if you do bother to put items onto project planning lines, and you will have the ability to drill down on the specific project that they are then part of, so that you can decide how many units you need to purchase and when they need to arrive. So that's a quite cool feature as well. But again, I'd like to show you how to create a purchase order manually. So I'm going to go in here and I'm going to go to a purchase order. and create a brand new purchase order from scratch. So here's a PO that I have in the system. I'm going to grab one of my fictitious vendors in the software here, and of course I have my basic PO information here as well, but now I'm going to go in here and pick this item that I need for this particular project. So this is a manual process at this point because I'm not using any of the pre-assigned tools that are available for me to do this automatically, but I'm going to go and grab the project redesign, kitchen redesign project here, and also the exact part that it's part of. In this case here I need it for the actual kitchen design process. And if you have, again, inventory management, you can set up multiple locations as well. So for large organizations that have more than one warehouse, or have a single warehouse and then a large fleet of service trucks or what have you, you can set them up with multiple options here at this point. And then you simply put in the quantity that you wish to order, and the software will retrieve last purchase order cost and what have you, and then create a purchase order for you automatically. So this is how you link a purchase order to a project specifically, and not just a project but a task of project. If you budgeted for it, you can even link it to the job planning line, although that is optional here as well. Once you release the PO, you simply hit the release button, which of course the software also supports a electronic approval process for purchase orders over certain dollar amounts. So you could have a more junior person handling smaller projects but requiring a senior approval before they proceed with the issuance of these POs. And in my case, I don't have that set up, so I'm just going to simply go ahead and release my PO, and that will simply give it to the vendor and allow me to send it to the vendor. And then of course I would receive it and do related transactions to a purchase order. The next thing I would like to review with you is just a straight purchase invoice, where we don't issue a purchase order at all, and there's nothing to match against, but we just called the vendor and said, hey, send something out or provide some services like a subcontractor, what have you, and they simply send you an invoice after they're done, and you want to simply record that on a particular project. So let's go take a look at that. So now I'm going to do a purchase invoice, bypassing the purchase order process. So I'm just going to go right off here, create a brand new transaction, and let's just pretend I got a permit fee from the city of Dallas, and I'm recording it right in here. I'm recording an invoice number from them, of course invoice date and such thing as standard accounts payable activity. I'd like to notice to you here, or point out to you here, is that we have the ability to invoice many different things. Again, it kind of depends on what part of the Business Central system you're running. If you're running GL accounts only versus items with inventory management, you can do resources, and you can do other type of transactions here as well. In my case here, I'm going to do a GL account, and I'm going to hit the permit part of the system, and hit my GL account for permits and licenses. I'm going to hit this specific project in question, which was my kitchen redesign project here, and I'm going to go in there and assign it to the permits and scheduling process of the project. And in my case here, I'm going to go ahead and hit a $740 permit fee that I want to record. And in my case, there are some tax groupings that you have to assign it with. If you're using electronic document management, you can of course attach your PDF files that you might have gotten for this particular transaction in here as well, and there's no limits to how many attachments you can have on this particular transaction. So in my case, this is all good to go. You can set up Business Central to request approval, so certain dollar amounts can trigger a review of an accounting manager or CFO. You can preview your transactions before you actually post them, and then once everything is looking golden, you can actually go ahead and post this, which is what I'm going to do here right now. So now this transaction has been recorded. So in the next, I'd like to take a quick peek at how that impacted my actual job, and then we're going to finish off with the timesheet parts of the project costing module, so that you have a sense for how that works as well. Now I'd like to cover the timesheet capabilities within Business Central. Again, these are optional and are not required for the project costing module. However, they do allow you to track timesheet entries for any resources, either internal or external. In my case, I like to track some internal resources. I'm going to go to timesheets. They're done on a weekly basis. They always typically start on a Sunday or a Monday, which you can configure in the system. In my case here, I'm going to start my timesheet here that I've previously configured, As you can see here, I put in a number of hours in already for various parts of our kitchen redesign project. So you can see here I can make these charges chargeable and non-chargeable. Also, when I record my timesheet, I don't have to bill to projects. I can also just bill to the resource or record an absence. So for example, if I want to record absence in certain ones, you can configure it to be on and off. But the point is, you can record absences here as well. And then you have the ability to see the weekly totals quickly in this summary page of the fact box side of the timesheet entry. And here you have totals by day for the whole week as a whole, and then what stages of these entries you are actually currently in. So we're starting with an open stage, and then we'll then submit our hours for our manager to review, and then the manager will reject them or approve them, and then finally they will get posted against the project in a separate posting process. So that's the basic phase that you go through, the phases you go through for these particular entries. And if I'm the employee making the entries, which of course I can also do on a smartphone and on my tablet, but inside of Business Central I can simply record them like this. When I'm done with my entry, I'm going to hit the submit button, and that will send it off to my manager for review. So in my case, I'm just going to hit submit, and that will then allow me to select a specific line that I want to submit, or the entire weekly sheet, which I'm going to go ahead and do right now. So now this is submitted. Once it's submitted, I no longer have the ability to make changes to it. It'll be locked up until my manager either rejects or approves the transaction. I can add additional lines to my timesheet, but I can no longer edit the ones that I have already in the system. Once the timesheet has been submitted, my manager will get notified, and I will get into the manager's timesheet. So this is what the managers will see, and the manager will see that these hours have been entered and submitted, and then from in here they can either approve them or reject them with comments, and that would allow them to communicate with the individual resource about any changes that might need to make to happen on this particular transaction. And that will record the hours against the project once you go through the appropriate posting procedures. And now once this would get posted, if I go back into my projects and I'll take a look at my project here with Kitchen Redesign, you look at the project statistics. Those hours will be entered in the resource section. So in the statistics page of the project management tool, you are seeing several columns for either resources, inventory items, or just GL accounting. All of these are optional. You don't have to use all three like I'm doing in this example here, but you have a budget, cost, an actual cost, a budgeted billing, and an actual billing, and all of that will get compared to your budget overall and your project overall in this statistics page. Obviously, there's all the details that are available by clicking on the hyperlink, and you can then drill down on the details for this. But this is your statistics page that will show you the totals for this particular project on this page. One last thing I would like to take a look at is some of the other reporting options and options in the system in general. So we'll go transition into that part of the setup and just finalize our review of the project costing module inside of Business Central. Before we get into the setup, though, I do still want to show you the invoicing process inside of Business Central if you generate invoices against projects for customers as well. In my case here, I will generate an invoice for my kitchen redesign. Customer owes me some money. We are done with the project, or we're doing a partial invoicing as well, which of course we can do at any time. In my case here, I'm going to make it a very simple example where I'm going to build the entire project. If I go into my generate sales invoice option from the home button here, I can select a posting date or invoice date that I wish to use. Let's say I'm doing the end of July here of 24. I can bill for the entire project, or I can bill for individual tasks. So if we were billing the customer for every phase inside of our project, let's say the architecture and design, the demo, what have you, we could certainly do that as well. In my case, again, I'm keeping it simple, so I'm billing for the entire project. I'm simply selecting the project in question. I don't have to do this. I could do all the projects at once as well. And then if you do time and material project billing, you can also only bill for activity that happened in a particular date range. So in my case here, if you want to do just activity for time and material project in the month of July, you can certainly do that. Again, this example I'm going to keep simple, so I'm just billing everything for this particular project with a sales invoice date of the end of the month. Hit OK, system will come up and say an invoice has been generated. I will then go take a look at my invoice. Here's my Peter Miller invoice that we just generated together, and of course you see all the relevant information coming in here, including the lines of our 5 different phases with the appropriate totals that I'm billing for at this point. I could simply delete something here. If I say, for example, I'm not billing for the last line, I could also do this and still modify the invoice well before I submit it to the customer. When you're ready to actually submit it to the customer, you would need to do a posting process. So in here you do posting process, and that will generate a posted sales invoice, which you then actually send to the customer. And they of course will pay it then accordingly with their AR terms, or get charged at a credit card or whatever payment arrangements you've made with the client. But this is how you go about generating the invoice. Interesting note is that this is a unposted sales invoice, so this is not set in stone, and if I do discover mistakes on here that are not correct, that need to be corrected before I submit the invoice, I can simply hit delete the entire invoice, go back to my project, fix the problem, and come back into my project billing setup here, and then simply just say, hey, generate a new invoice for this project, and simply by just going through the process again, and the system will generate invoices over and over and over again until you actually invoice them. And then of course once you post the invoice, then the data will be set in stone. You can reverse them technically, but that will recreate, a gap-compliant reversing entry in your system. But as you can see here, all the lines are reappearing as I had them before, and now could simply go ahead and post the transaction once I'm done with that. So this is how you go about billing the customer. Obviously, there's many choices in this area, depending on the type of project you're dealing with. And whether or not it's even appropriate to bill the customer directly from the project. In the case of marketing expense projects where you would never bill a customer, but you're simply using the project tool to keep track of costs as well. Final part of our project costing module review is going to be work in progress or WIP type of capabilities in the software. So as part of this review of that project feature set, I'm going to go and show you some of the cost structures I've set up for this kitchen design process. We already recorded some permit fees that were associated with this project. Separately from that action, I also recorded some subcontractor fees that are also associated with cost for this project. So as you can see here, I've both budgeted and actual cost associated with this particular project, and my work in progress or WIP method has been set up to POC, which is percent of completion. Once you use this sort of capability, the system has a automated computation that is in place where it looks at actual cost versus budgeted cost to come up with a percentage completion ratio, which in this case is 11.7%. So in the WIP section of the system, which is optional and you do not have to use this, but if you do use WIP, it will generate the appropriate revenue recognition for this assumed cost. So if there is a timing difference in your accounting periods between when you invoice the customer versus when you actually get expenses associated with this project, and you wish to record the appropriate revenue in your general ledger, assuming that the billing will go through in accordance with signed contracts. In this case here, it would generate 11.7% of the revenue as part of the WIP entry, which is an internal general ledger entry primarily. And this entry will be generated by the system, computed by the system. You can then post that entry with this post function here, and then upon the completion of the project, these entries would be reversed and or neutralized in accordance with the completion of the overall project. These WIP methods that are supported are based on different choices that can be configured. There's completed of contract, there's cost of sales, cost of value, percentage completion, and then finally sales value. That are the most common WIP methods that you can use in Business Central. Obviously, this is mostly applicable to very large projects that go on over a long period of time and multiple accounting periods, and you are concerned about seeing the revenue that's associated with these projects in the appropriate accounting period. So this is an example of a simple percent completion that's based on actual cost versus budgeted cost, and the automation of this system is completely done by the software on its own. Simply hit the calculate WIP and hit OK here, and we'll generate the WIP, and then you can post the WIP to the GL accordingly. Obviously that requires some setup in the work in progress setup of the system, and you should consult a Business Central resource such as CBR Technology when you set up this part of the system in Business Central, but the accounting WIP entries will be automated as part of this process. Again, thank you very much for attending our walkthrough of the project costing module in Business Central, and we're looking forward to working with you and your team to implement Business Central. Take care.